Hello everyone, Ryan here. So I recently read an ebook titled The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. And I do want to apologize beforehand because I will be using profanity in this review, mostly because the author himself used profanity in this book. I mean, the F word is in the title, so it's just... But he only does that in order to drive his point across a little harder, and which I guess it kind of works. Of course, this book is categorized as a self-help book, but I believe it should be thought of as a book that can help people become a little more self-aware. By self-aware, I mean self-aware of one's own thoughts, opinions, ideas, emotions. Also, how to deal with one's own emotions and the emotions of other people, which I believe is definitely something that can help anybody, really, regardless of whatever background they come from. I do like that the author cites different people, different well-known figures, such as Charles Bukowski, the Buddha, Dave Mustaine, several other people, some who I had never really heard of before, but he is able to really describe the nature of, by citing these different examples. Of course, all he really does is try to illustrate the nature of, I guess, how people think in general, and not only that, but how, why it is that he attempts to analyze why people care about certain things, and not only that, but why people mostly care about the trivial things and superficial things, which is one thing that he brings up about the fact that nowadays, due to things like the internet, social media, there seems to be more people today that worry more about trivial things, superficial things, because of the fact that through social media they're able to post whatever it is that's worrying them and then have their worries reinforced by other people who comment or share, or like sympathize with whatever it is that they're going through. And of course, that's not to say that there aren't some people who actually do have legitimate worries, concerns, but he mostly focuses on writing about the fact that, the bulk of what people are worrying about via social media, for the most part, is stuff that, really nobody should be worrying about or stressing about. So, and that's definitely one of the things that I agree with, definitely. But then also too, he is able to shine a spotlight on the fact that whenever we care too much about a particular thing, whether it's a legitimate concern or not, but whenever we care too much about something or worry too much about something, it is possible that just by worrying we can make ourselves physically and also mentally ill. And I do believe that to be true. And essentially, this book, it is an interesting read. I will say to me, it definitely came across as being somewhat Zen-like, somewhat inspirational. It is also somewhat autobiographical because the author does draw on a lot of his own life experiences, especially in the latter half of the book. But ultimately, the core of his message that he tries to get across is that only, only by not caring too much, or rather in his words, only by not giving a fuck about certain things, can we truly free ourselves up to just enjoy life and just enjoy being ourselves, just enjoy pursuing our passions, because ultimately that's what he believes life is all about, existence is all about. And I would say I definitely agree with that. I believe the same thing, that ultimately we do all have our own paths to follow, our own journeys, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to become too overly concerned about certain things. Now, obviously, again, each of us must deal with certain things in certain ways. And the author, he does point out briefly that, we should take care of whatever responsibilities we may have. But other than that, there's no point in worrying about something that is just, there's no point in worrying about stuff that is completely out of our control. There just isn't. It's that simple. So, I would say I definitely give this book 4 out of 5 stars. Yeah. Also, too, I'm not so sure that everybody would like this book because of the fact that, not just because of the profanity that the author uses, but because of the fact that the first half of the book, he does pretty much just right off the bat point out that people should stop considering themselves to be completely special and unique, and people should embrace being ordinary, embrace the mediocrity of life. But that also falls under the whole thing about, his core message being not to care too much about certain things. But then also, too, I do find that some of what he writes about does come off as kind of hypocritical, because in one chapter he talks about not caring too much about something, but then in another chapter he talks about caring only about whatever it is you want to care about. But then in another chapter he briefly mentions that when we care only about things that concern us, that comes off as being too selfish, but also that it's impossible to him, that he believes it's impossible to just not care about anything at all, because ultimately when you try not to care about anything, you ultimately end up caring about everything, and which that in itself is a very Zen statement, very Zen-like statement, which if you're not familiar with that kind of thing, with that kind of thinking, obviously I would say you're not going to agree with it, but at the same time you're not really going to be able to benefit from, whatever. Really, a statement like that, all it is trying to give the reader a certain amount of space to just accept that chaos is a part of life, part of reality. And yes, chaos is bad, obviously. But it doesn't mean that we have to feel helpless, nor does it mean that we should feel like we have to solve every problem in the world. Unless, of course, we do happen to have the ability to solve every problem or to solve certain problems. Then yes, by all means, if we have the means of solving certain problems, we should solve them. But if we don't, then we should consider it perfectly fine to not stress over those problems. But then, yes, at the same time, that can seem very selfish. Obviously. How can I not seem selfish? But yeah, I mean, that's why I mentioned that. To me, it felt like certain things that the author writes about in this book do seem hypocritical. But that's being hypocritical. Being a hypocrite is also part of reality. And that's another thing that we do have to accept and also ultimately learn from too. So I mean, yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that in this book, but like I said, you know, it's obviously, I know it's not going to be for everybody, but the few people that do actually read it, and I do recommend reading it, at least the first half of the book, I would say, because the first half, for me, it seemed to just really hit home and really make a lot of sense, because it deals with a lot of things that pertain to creativity, I guess, people who happen to be creative in some aspect of their own lives, or, you know, I mean, if you happen to be like a writer, musician, actor, dancer, if, you know, you do happen to do anything creative, even if it's just, you know, making YouTube videos, I would say you should definitely at least read the first half of this book, because you could end up figuring out a new way in which to go about approaching your various creative projects. So that's what I think. I would say I learned more from the first half of the book than the second half. So, but yeah, I don't want to ramble on and on too much about this. But it's definitely interesting. Definitely an interesting read. If you're able to, I say definitely check it out. Buy it, download it, whatever you can do to access it. You know, or just read the title and learn from the title. You know, the subtle art. Be subtle in not giving a fuck. You know, or something like that. I don't know. It's... But yeah, 4 out of 5 stars. That'll do it for this review. Ebook review. Yeah, I think this might be my first ebook review. Definitely not my first book review, but yeah. Anyways, there is also an audiobook version of this. I haven't heard it. I don't really even know of anybody that has listened to it, but it might be interesting. It might be a little slightly better to listen to the audiobook instead. But yeah, anyways, that'll do it for this review. Once again, 4 out of 5 stars for The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. And that'll do it. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And as always, till next time, keep it real, keep on rocking, and peace.